Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. We're going to be talking Italian now.
Ah, vita? Mamma mia.
It's time to say
What?
bellissimo.
Uh, in many ways, yeah. It is a good bike.
Okay. Okay.
I should clarify here that we're talking about the Aprilia Tuono 457. The Tuono is one of my favorite motorcycles on earth.
Why, Shumi?
It's just the extension of everything that I think a street naked should do. If you look on circles in a few, it should be out by the time you see this. There's a story about how that this is the only motorcycle that made me physically howl with emotion, like cry, like tears falling, cry. And to the point where I'm fortunate enough to own one. And everything that I thought at the test ride that causes all the emotions, it's 100% part of the Tuono format. I have a 2016 V4 factory. And I have been fascinated with the idea of the Tuono from the very start, from the first one. Because back in the day, a manufacturer would take a sports bike and they'd say, oh, we need to make a naked out of this. So there was the R1 and then there was the FZ1, and it was called the Phaser and FZ1 dependent. And they would always do the same thing. They would take the engine, then they would detune the engine, then they would soften the suspension, give it a taller handlebar and say, this is our naked.
Right.
Then Aprilia created the RSV1000, which was their first motorcycle of this class. And when they did the Tuono, the big story was they didn't do anything but change the handlebar. So there was a different top fairing. It was called the VR1000 Tuono. It had a top fairing, it had a handlebar, and they didn't bother to tune the suspension, they didn't bother to tune the engine. Tuono.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and it created a very naughty motorcycle, right? Because the weight that you'd normally get on the front on the RS, on the meal, because of the fairing, etc., it just wasn't there on the Tuono. And it was powerful, and it was at that point a huge machine compared to its peers. It was a big motorcycle. And it was a big, naughty motorcycle that would lift its front wheel in inappropriate places and stuff. And it created a legend. And today, I don't know, 17 years later, the Tuono is still one of those beautiful, naughty motorcycles that can do a lot of stuff today. But when you provoke it, there's anger in here. What I like about the Tuono 457 is some of those elements have translated literally one for one to this small motorcycle.
But isn't it fundamentally the RS?
Yeah, so that's what. In that translation, a few things have been missed.
I expected the story to be is the RS with different handlebars.
Unfortunately, you're right. And fortunately, it creates a lot of good feelings too.
Okay.
But what they've missed are some of them are obvious misses.
Okay.
And if you're thinking about buying a Tuono, I think you're fundamentally buying a good bike. But those misses, they're going to cost you every kilometer that you ride this bike.
Oh my.
Yeah. So it's not as easy a decision as I thought it would be. To be able to say, hey, listen, 3.95 X showroom, twin cylinder, 47, 48 bhp, that great Italian sound, this design, blah, 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 just have at it.
I was just going to think that for most people it'll be, hey, why are you going to buy the RS? The Tuono is the better fit for you.
Yeah, but it's not that obvious. Okay, so to get through what they've done, what you said is spot on. This is a RS457 with the fairing removed.
Okay.
Luckily, it's not that simple. So they did redesign the fuel tank a little bit. They changed the handlebar, obviously. But what I think everybody missed in the stories that I saw online, perhaps because Aprilia didn't tell them more than they didn't ask, is there are very fine-tuned changes to the suspension setup, which are exactly what Aprilia does on the larger Tuono also.
Okay.
To give you an example, when I rode my V4 for the first time, it was sitting at its lowest setting in terms of ride height. Okay, the suspension is height adjustable, so you can fully raise the motorcycle a little bit higher or a little bit lower, and it comes in the low setting. The low setting makes it very, very reactive. So in traffic, this thing is just turning like a Duke, like same kind of weight, but more grip, more performance, whatever. When you go to the racetrack, the Tuono is too alert for that setup to run. So they say when you take a Tuono to the racetrack, you raise the motorcycle and slow the steering down. The RS457, Tuono 457 relationship is exactly the same. So they have the same setup, the same chassis, but the Tuono's forks are raised through the triple tree. 3 mm, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or some small number like that.
Interesting.
That gives it a little bit less rake angle, 0.3 degrees, I think, or 0.4 degrees, something like that. And it accounts for the fact that the Tuono carries a little bit more weight on the front wheel than the RS457 does. And it changes this to a slightly shorter wheelbase and therefore a slightly more reactive, slightly sharper reactioning motorcycle.
Nice.
So when you ride the Tuono, because you have more leverage from this handlebar plus this setup, it is going to turn a little bit more than the RS. The pro, it'll feel good. The con, whenever you take a motorcycle towards agility, you trade in a little bit of stability. On the Tuono, this is not a problem because the RS457 was so stable anyway that it's not like the Tuonos become unstable. But when you ride the RS and the Tuono back to back, the Tuono will respond to you much quicker. And the RS will say there's so much performance and so much precise performance that these kind of fast reactions are not helping you. So slow down. If you think about it, this is exactly what KTM did when the Duke and the RC happened also. The Duke has the faster reactions, and the RC has the calmer, more mature reaction. So when you go into a corner at the racetrack, you want the RC stability more than you want the Duke's agility. Same thing. Now, this also means that the suspension tuning has not fundamentally been changed.
Okay.
So on the RS, you would say sports bike. Suspension being a little bit stiff, it's not a problem. But when the same thing you experience on a Tuono, you think, hey, is this the right thing to do? Right? So today on the way to work, I've put about 300 kilometers in all, highway, small roads, twisties and city. I was trying to figure out where is the discomfort coming from, and it's coming from the back. And it feels like the rebound is not letting this motorcycle be, so you're constantly being pushed up out of the seat. And on a concrete road, which a lot of highways are today, I really struggled with the motorcycle. I was not expecting to. I'm pretty resilient on motorcycles, but I went about, I want to say 80 kilometers towards Goa on NH66, which is incredible as concrete goes. I didn't know you could lay concrete that badly, but they've done it somehow. Having spent, I don't know, 15 years building that road, they've really, really, really messed up the concrete. Like I'm telling you, you want to figure out how good the suspension on anything you own is, you come to Mumbai, you take that road, you go to Goa. If you're still in love with your vehicle in Goa, they've nailed the suspension. Chances are 95% of the vehicles, you will not be in love with your vehicle anymore.
I was just going to say that's too tough a test, man. That's
it's the ultimate test. It's the ultimate test. And I'm sorry to say, but the Tuono really, really struggled. And most of it is just the fact that this is not any softer than a RS. The only thing that has changed is because you have a regular handlebar, you are in a position where you can lift yourself out of the seat a little bit if you want to. But they haven't even changed the foot peg positions. They're the exact same as the RS. So your feet are tucked under you. Your knees are bent. I'm used to that riding position, but even then. So to me, from this point, the story gets better and better and better. And I think this is an incredible motorcycle. No, but I'm telling you straight away, go into the showroom on your test ride thinking I'm about to ride what might be an interesting emotional experience, but definitely a physically uncomfortable experience is your baseline.
Now, two things I want to bring up here. You've ridden other bikes down on that road before.
This is one of the toughest. There'll be a sequence of Royal Enfield 650s that will be much worse, obviously. And I have done that road on the thing. But on the Tuono, you can see the potential. See, what I said for the Bear is true. So in a way, I was thinking on the Aprilias, their hashtag is Be a Racer. And now they put Be, A and Racer in 3 colors. On my Tuono, it was 2 colors. And I always read it as Bear, Acer. Okay. And when I thought of that, I started laughing when I was riding because it's exactly the same feeling as the Bear, where you can see the massive potential of the bike. You can see the discomfort coming also from the rear suspension this time. And you can see that it is going to be a deal breaker for many people. So what does this bike do wrong? Honestly, not much.
So again, if I have to sum this up, it's because the slight difference in the steering angle, which is making the bike more reactive. So over these bumpier surfaces, it's just feeling like more work. The suspension setup effectively is not sportier than the RS457.
No, it's not. See, it's saying that if I go to do hot yoga, then you consider sweating a part of the experience, so it's not a problem. But if you go to do yoga and the studio is not cooled enough and you start to sweat, like you're doing shavasana and you're sweating, then you're like, this is not how shavasana works. It's that problem. There's nothing wrong with the bike.
So fundamentally, if you were to take the RS457 on that same road, it'll be just as painful.
Yes, but you would accept it saying, yeah, but I bought a sport bike, so it's fine.
Okay, that's
Right? That's the issue. So
Okay.
it's primarily, I think Aprilia should have done one more step and taken a look at the rear suspension, and maybe it needs a different damper, maybe it needs a different spring, but they haven't done it.
make it different from the proper Tuono.
No, this is, to me,
Come on,
they've gone
Shumi.
a little lazy on this motorcycle. There is no escaping it. I cannot defend them on this front, and you can see that the laziness harms this motorcycle. But what the motorcycle does well,
It's just one question, sorry, completely side note. But didn't the Tuono have the larger engine for the longest time than the RS?
yes, that's later.
That
Not
came
at the
later,
beginning.
but it did have that.
Yes. That's when
So
the,
there have been times when they've put in more effort for the Tuono.
oh yeah, for sure. So
Right.
what happened is, as they began to realize that the Tuono's torque was what the story of the Tuono was becoming, then the fact that the RSV was becoming higher and higher revving was not an asset for the Tuono, and lowering the gearing wasn't enough. So there was many years the Tuono was 1140cc engine, but the RSV, because it had the race exposure and all of that, it was 1000.
Yeah.
In fact, now they've gone backwards, where the current RSV's engine is actually a Tuono
Tuono
engine
engine.
tuned back up again. And what is amazing about Aprilia's is that if you go to the forums, you'll find Tuonos with RSV bodywork and clip-ons. You'll find RSVs with Tuono bodywork. It was so interchangeable that this company has always been, if you want to call it lazy about these two products and letting them be interchangeable. Even today, Aprilia ECUs, they are some of the least locked down ECUs where retuning, remapping is some of the simplest things to do is an Aprilia.
It sounds right for Italian.
Yeah. So I remember buying my Tuono and I called Arco Automotive, Shrikant Apte sir, and he said, I have a race ECU if you want, and he wasn't able to sell it or whatever. So I got it at a ridiculous price. And then I met Vignesh, and Vignesh said, why did you buy the ECU? I said, why? It's called a Guzi Diag cable. I bought the cable for $15. I would have sent you the cable and the map and you could have done it yourself. They're that open. And this is 2019-20. I don't know if it's that open, but they've always been these people.
The one thing that he hasn't told you about the Tuono, I don't know, was the one thing that Sirhan, every time the name Tuono comes up, it flashes back to him and he goes, thunder.
Thunder.
Because Tuono means thunder, and the motorcycle is mad like that.
Yeah, it's totally mad, right? Yeah. So, in the case of the 457, they have been a little bit lazy. And if they hadn't been lazy about it, I think there was a potential to make this motorcycle vastly, vastly greater. I will say this, and we'll discuss this in more detail. If you're thinking Duke plus 1 lakh rupees equal to Tuono, I don't think I can say that the Tuono is not worth the extra lakh of rupees.
It is worth the extra 1 lakh.
It is worth, but the comfort level will drop drastically from what the Duke is able to do today to what the Tuono is doing right now.
Duke suspension was fantastic.
Yeah. Now, back to this motorcycle. The first thing that you'll notice about the Aprilia is just how upmarket, premium, well finished it looks. They've nailed it with the RS 457, but that has fairings, so you can hide a lot of worse looking things behind a fairing. This has not much to hide behind, and still it looks spectacularly high quality, and nobody can pass the motorcycle without thinking you're riding something expensive. Not necessarily large, but expensive. Part of it is also how this engine sounds. They chose the 270-degree parallel twin, and only Aprilia seems to know how to get an exhaust to sound like they do. So the 457 RS sounds larger than it is. The Tuono, it sounds larger than it is. There's a peculiar smoothness to these engines, which I've experienced on my V4 Tuono. The same kind of smoothness exists on this engines too. The Tuono seems to vibrate a little bit more than I remember the RS twin. Little bit, minor. But maybe it's because we got a brand new motorcycle, so it has not been running at all. Whereas the 457 had been to the racetrack media thing and then came to us. Maybe it's that. But fundamentally smooth, slick, easy, and their engines almost freewheel when you close the throttle, and it just makes everything feel simple. It's like your chassis doesn't move until you touch the brake or open the throttle and force the chassis to react. It's brilliant. So this engine, it's brilliant. I'll tell you what I did. I did something really stupid on this bike. I was making a U-turn on my way to work day before yesterday, and it's a busy intersection where trucks crisscross each other. So I like to get through this U-turn really quickly. I did on the Tuono, and at the end of that U-turn, as I was picking up the motorcycle from whatever minor lean angle it was at, it started to judder a little bit. Now,
the front?
Yeah, the whole motorcycle, engine.
Okay.
The engine started to judder a little bit. And I was like, this twin has so much torque, it never judders. What the hell did I just do? And I knew it was me. I knew it was me because this engine, I was doing the U-turn at 17 kmph and I was in third gear.
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, I have overtaken things repeatedly and tried to shift into 7th and 8th and 9th gear because in my head, the performance I felt, I think I'd shifted down to 2nd or 3rd. I was in 4th the whole time. So this is a beautiful, I know you're about to ask about reliability, we'll come to that. But this is a beautiful twin-cylinder engine. It sounds great. It is smooth. It returns some 25 kilometers per liter. But honestly, that's not why I would buy this bike or ignore this bike. The feelings that it creates. Nothing else on this market, nothing else in this class creates the feelings that the Aprilia twin-cylinder engine does. It really is something special.
I remember when I rode the RS457 and I came back, I didn't ride the Tuono, but when I rode the RS457 and I came back, and I've always told him like after the Busa, the bike that I want would be an RSV.
Yeah.
And I've ridden the RSV at the track, and I came back and I told Shumi, like, if I wasn't looking at speed references and if I didn't know what it was, I'd think I was on an RSV.
Yeah.
The feel, the sound, the engine character, the pulse, everything is just like that.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this again. I don't think Aprilia is a very well-run global organization in terms of business, but as an engineering organization, they produce some very, very kick-ass motorcycles. Okay, so the engine, fundamentally, my God, it's great. Gearbox, at this price, the quickshifter, which is a 20,000 rupee accessory, I think it should just be standard. And to me, I would consider the quickshifter a mandatory accessory, and it doesn't have to be on the bike on day one. If you buy an RS or a Tuono, you should be saving up for the quickshifter. It is going to dramatically improve your experience, not because it's useful, because it'll be fun.
Okay.
And it is a good gearbox. It's a easy, light shifting
because
gearbox.
I was thinking the gearbox was good.
You go up and down the gearbox, clutchless, no issues. Don't downshift clutchless unless you know how to, because you will damage the gearbox. But to me, quickshifter on this, it will make the bike more fun. And you're adding the fun. You're not adding any ability, utility, none of this. It's just a fun thing. So if you can buy this bike, please save for the quickshifter. And Aprilia, you really should make it standard. Okay. That goes into this incredible chassis. On the RS, the chassis is just so responsive in the sense of it knows what you want. And the Tuono is exactly the same. It's just a little bit quicker responding. So on the twisty road that I used to test motorcycles on, and the idea is I go back to the same road, same corners over and over and over again. So your reference points are very clear. The Tuono is always 2 steps ahead of you. So I had to delay all my inputs because it would react faster with those inputs. I didn't have a stability issue at all. But everywhere where I thought I would turn in the motorcycle here, if I did, I would be in danger of crossing the white line in the middle and going off to the other side. So every single corner I had to remember, I can brake a little bit later. I can turn a little bit later and still achieve the same result, not losing stability. And at the racetrack, I don't think you'd lose much to the RS in terms of overall performance. But if it was a tight and twisty racetrack, I would have to be a little bit more gentle with the Tuono's inputs because it does react faster. Okay. Cherry on the cake are the TVS Eurogrip Pro Torque Extreme tires. You know, I said in a couple of episodes ago, I said I'm very proud of the Indian bike manufacturers because look at what Royal Enfield, TVS, Bajaj, Hero are doing. I have to give credit where it's due. Our tires are very good too now. So if you think about it, the Apollo H1, great sport tire. Then I tested the Active Grip on a bunch of Enfields a long time ago. Again, on off-road pattern, but very good tires. Then you've got the Trampler XR, which is on the KTM, another good tire. Similarly, on the Eurogrip front, the Pro Torque Extreme is just, whoa, it's damn good. And then I had also, there was a little logistics mistake that led to it, but I had a Pro Torque Sport on the KTM also for a while. Not as great as the Extreme, but a very good tire anyway. Then the ATT 1015 or whatever it's called, the one on the X-Pulse. They're making good tires too. And I'm telling you this, I have thought about getting a Road 6, which I think is like a great tire on my KTM for a while. I just haven't had to. The first time I thought that the H1 came, sorted. Wow, good tire. Then I had to replace the H1. I thought, now I'll get the Road 5. Pro Torque Extreme, sorted. So, excellent tires. On the road, on concrete, so much grip, so much confidence. And I have ridden these tires in the wet. They are incredibly good in the wet. The confidence that you can push the motorcycle with even in the wet is just phenomenal. So, underneath all of this is good. Brakes, traditional RS457 problem from the start. I double checked with Aprilia. Sintered pads are now standard on the front. This organic pad thing is history.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And which is why I kept thinking these are good brakes, they have feelsome, they have performance. Let's push, but the brakes are still feeling great. So that twisty section is about 23, 24 kilometers long. It's kind of deserted. You can really push the brakes if you want. I did. No reactions, bike just worked. So that has also been changed. So now braking issues on the Aprilia, on the Tuono should be a thing of the past. I would still say, if you do ride fast, you should consider changing the stock brake fluid, which is usually .4 to 5.1. It's directly compatible, it's not expensive, but in terms of your ability to keep loading up the brakes and generating heat and the fluid absorbs it, 5.1 gives you an advantage. So if you're a fast rider, I would want to run 5.1. And on all my bikes run 5.1.
And the RS, the brake pads were the organic ones.
At the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. Did they swap it out on the RS as well at some
I
point?
don't know if they've retro swapped it, but now all the RSs that are being sold, all the Tuonos that are being sold, they all have the sintered front brake.
Okay. And the issue then was sponginess, or was it just
Actual fade.
fade? So
Actual fade.
So you didn't have an instance of fade on this?
Not at all. And in fact, I had inferred that when they launched the RS 457 at the racetrack in Italy, there were no complaints about the brakes.
They had the pads
and
there.
They had put the racing pads, and the racing pads, as Aprilia calls them, are just sintered pads. So to me, whatever the heating issues that were leading to the fade, it was originating in the brake pad, because the rest of the braking system was stock on the European launch.
Awesome. Okay.
Solved. Okay. So is there a racing brake pad that Aprilia will try to sell you this time or not? I don't think so anymore, because I think that's what they put in this bike. But whatever it is solved. I also think Jehan was saying that the caliper design on the current KTM Duke and the Aprilia is exactly the same. They're both Bibre radial mount calipers. And if that be the case, then KTM's sintered pad prices are, I think it's 2,000 rupees for a set. And if Aprilia's prices are 8,000 rupees, you just don't buy the Aprilia pad, you put the KTM pad instead. If you do it outside, technically you can void your warranty, but that presumes that the Aprilia technician will have the capability to figure out that this is not the original pad, which I don't think is going to actually be possible, because the bag says Aprilia, but the brake pad actually doesn't say Aprilia anywhere as far as I know. So this is your easy solution if you think the parts are expensive, and Aprilia parts can be much more expensive than the KTM. Bajaj on that front is very hard to beat.
Okay.
So the other issue I had is the seat foam is a little bit soft. On the RS, you're canted forward a little bit. So the weight is ahead of your bum a little bit. So your bum doesn't carry quite as much weight. So if the pad is a little bit soft, you don't notice it for a long time. But on the Tuono, you sit more upright. So your weight is going straight down your bum. Suddenly you notice, oh, this is kind of soft. So on that 300 kilometer odd run that I had to think 260 kilometers, towards the end, I knew.
I was just thinking, what else is remaining to not like, okay.
Yeah, so towards the end of that run, maybe 50 kilometers from office, I was aches and pains. Untenable aches and pains, no, but it had started. So it will become a problem. So if you're touring with the Tuono, and that's what your plan is, that I'll buy this bike, I'll commute, and now and then I'll go out on the highway. Weekend trips, you'll be fine. But longer trips, there's not enough space for luggage on the back because the pillion pad is really small. The seat, I would basically go to a seat guy and ask for much, much stiffer foam. And the rear suspension, there's no easy solution to it, but you're going to have to look at it.
Okay. Electronics, I've forgotten.
It's exactly the same as the RS457 with minor calibration changes, because the Tuono's rear sprocket is 1 tooth larger. And that gives it a little bit lower gearing. So some of the traction control calibrations have changed slightly. But basically, you have 3 riding modes, Eco, Rain and Sport. You have 3 levels of traction control, non-IMU enabled, but it is a very good system. Most of the minor interventions, you won't even be able to...
It doesn't have an IMU.
It doesn't have an IMU. But most of the minor interventions, you can't even tell that the system came in, helped you and left.
So effectively, you'll have to watch when you're leaned over for the finer calibrations.
Yeah. So the KTM's advantage at a 1 lakh rupee lower price point is it is lean sensitive, etc., which this bike is not. But in a straight line, most of the time, you can't tell traction control has helped you or not. The worst is when you come off a speed breaker, and the suspension still loading and unloading. In that situation, you can have some heavy-handed inputs. But most of the time, in a straight line, you hit a small patch of gravel or whatever, it'll just take it out of your system. You won't even notice that that is very, very good.
Okay.
ABS calibration has also always been very good on this bike. It's not easy to trigger ABS. If you grab it, you can trigger ABS. But because the tires have so much grip and the chassis is so feelsome, this is a very, very good system overall.
So yummy.
Yeah. And Aprilia's UI UX menus have always been good. I think now I would say the KTM UI is a
Enduro.
little bit superior to the Aprilias, but leave that aside, this is a very good system. We have heard complaints about the Aprilia app.
Okay.
People who are trying to run turn-by-turn navigation, etc., they've struggled a little bit. The app seems to hang, etc., etc. So it's there, but it's not fully functional yet. But everything works. Everything is in an obvious place. Switching between the screens is easy. Mode button is on this side. You don't get confused. The traction control buttons are on this side. You don't get confused. The down button you press and hold, you turn ABS off. It's very simple. It's very intuitive. You learn it really quickly, and then you just never think about it again. So all the fundamentals of this Aprilia are all in a good place.
Okay. Talking about fundamentals, you would have used it in the city. Heat-wise,
Not too much, I think. Not too much. If I were to give you a direct reference, the KTM 390 Enduro R will much more obviously have a lot more heat on your legs than the Aprilia does.
Okay.
But heat is a personal thing. You and I ride a lot of motorcycles. We've gotten used to the idea that, hey, fast motorcycles produce heat. Some of the times it comes onto my leg. Some of the times it's lost in the breeze. If it's lost in the breeze, all good. If it's not, my leg is the last line of defense. So there is heat, some of it. You'll have to figure out how much you are willing to put up with and how much you want.
And if I do intend to do long distances with this, aside from the seat aspect of it, the wind and cruising ability, I mean, how with the shorter gearing, how does it end up sitting?
See, the shorter gearing doesn't make a difference because this is an engine with infinite latitude. It has no sense of strain. And despite the lower gearing, you're still doing what, 5,500 RPM at 100 or less maybe.
And it's happy there.
It's happy there. To me, in fact, if this was my Tuono, I would had another 2-3 teeth added to the rear sprocket.
How predictable.
No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. See, the delta from the RS's engine performance to the Tuono's performance is not massive, but it should be.
It didn't sound like that. You know, that's
It's not
you
massive.
didn't bring it up. You didn't bring up the gearing at all.
It's not massive. It's there, but it's not massive. And it can be massive because look, this engine is unstrained. If I were to set 8,000, 9,000 RPM on this engine whole day, the engine has no sense of strain. At 6,000 RPM, there's a change in the voice of the engine. At the bottom, it's this gruff roar, bassy thing. And then that bass sort of dissipates a little bit. But it doesn't fundamentally change your level of strain. Right? So I'm saying if you're willing to do 100 at, let's call it 5,500 RPM, I'm saying I'm willing to do 100 at 6,500 RPM. No stress. But that will give me so much more torque off the bottom. The problem is this bike is so torquey anyway. So it has two distinct torque zones, okay? So there's a lot of torque up to 5,000. 5 to 6, it's in a transition. And from 6, there is a definite uptick in the performance. Yeah. Definite uptick. I'm just saying I would like the transition zone to become a little bit lower, where I can access this zone and have a lot of torque, or that zone and have a lot of, let's call it horsepower. So at the highway, you're usually in the transition zone, which means when you open the throttle, you start the overtake rapidly, then much more rapidly. I'm saying I would have taken the gearing lower and saying you just be in one of those two zones. You stay below it and enjoy lots of torque, or you be above that and enjoy lots of performance. Both is possible, but the transition sort of sits at highway speeds.
Okay.
And I think if I were riding this bike a lot, I would want the transition to happen a little bit earlier.
And just from an experience standpoint, the RSV4, when you ride it, it feels like and see, he's lived the Tuono, so his perspective is one thing, right? I first rode the RSV4, and so for me, that was the reference of Aprilia's, and I rode it on the track, and it was like this very powerful, precision-guided missile. Like, it did whatever you wanted and did it exactly how you wanted it. And then he insisted, go ride the Tuono. And when I went and rode the Tuono, it was like somebody had just before I got onto it, slammed an injection of adrenaline into its ass, and it was just trying to burn it off. Like, no matter what you do, it's just running all the time. It's bucking and weaving and whatnot. It's like this wild, violent thing. And that's the personality of the bike, even by default, right?
Correct.
Not just on a racetrack.
So from that reference point, the Tuono 457 feels a lot more calm. And I think it could have been a lot naughtier. Given what I'm seeing of RS457 videos online though, I'm not convinced that making an angrier Tuono for the 457 was a good idea. Because to me, you know that brand that everybody says has colored hair and tight pants? It's very much the RS457 that is carrying that flag from the front now.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say this, that I think it's us. It's not the bikes, right?
No, it's not. It never is.
It's not them. It's
No.
us. It's what we are doing with them, and it's really a freaking shame that good bikes are being torched because of what we are doing with them.
Yeah, it's terrible. Anyway, so the upshot of the story, and I'm keeping this episode really short because there's honestly not a lot to talk about, is I loved riding the Tuono. The way it responds, the way that engine sounds, the way it pulls, the way it chills, it's all in such a fantastic place. Yes, we haven't come to the design and that fairing yet. I've left it out for a reason, right?
I was just thinking, that's the only thing left.
Yeah. But I know that if you go for a test ride, you are going to be impressed with the Tuono. But because the RS457 stands in the same showroom for about, 30,000 rupees more, many of you are going to switch to the RS instead. And yeah, that's fine. It's not a problem. Take the RS, figure out a way to raise the handlebar just a little bit. You'll get a riding position similar to the Pulsar RS200.
Okay.
A non-committed sporty riding position, and that will make the RS much easier to live with. If I were Aprilia, I would be looking at an accessory kit that moves the foot pegs forward a little bit and down a little bit, because not everybody is looking for cornering clearance, as Aprilia thinks everybody is. And you just open up the rider triangle and make this a very comfortable bike.
Tell me one thing, did you really think the RS457 was that committed?
No, but people do. See, we ride a lot of motorcycles and we've ridden a whole bunch of sporty motorcycles, and we accept that legs being folded up, problem for 2,000 kilometers, and then you never remember it after those 2,000 kilometers.
I think the thing that I feel people keep referring to in that seating position more often than not is the upper body position.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're ending up, I think, feeling strain on their arms, triceps, whatever, the forearms, whatever it is. And I always feel, and that should not put you off. That should not be the reason to stay away from a motorcycle. It's something that it actually says that you can get fitter. And you will get fitter if you ride that motorcycle more. And it's not that I understand that some bikes are committed. There are some bikes that I would not ride on a daily basis on streets. Like the ZX10R, for instance, right? The old 10R was awesome. The new one is out race bike. There's no chance of riding that on the streets.
Yep.
But this is not that.
No, and I would actually go even further to a more basic idea, which is motorcycles aren't comfortable. That's not what they were designed to do. There are some motorcycles that have achieved the idea that you can be comfortable. And what have they solved? A seat and a suspension. Can you solve the weather? I mean, I have to ride because it's my job when it's 45 degrees outside. And I no longer notice the strain of it because I've done it for many years. But can a motorcycle solve 45 degrees? No, a car can. Motorcycles aren't comfortable. Let's accept this. Now, if you think, to go back to my point, the RS457 is too committed a riding position, the Tuono will fold your legs roughly the same way. And if I were Aprilia and I was saying, okay, India, different country, what should we do? Then we should build a set of forward sets. Move the foot pegs a little bit ahead and a little bit down, and let people have a little bit more of room. Most of these guys who are...
As an option?
As an option. Most of these people who are riding with these slightly more open riding positions will not corner hard enough to scrape any hard parts. You'll be fine. It gives you an option. It gives you an out. That's all. Okay. And to me, if you take an RS660 with the wind protection and all of that and try to turn that into a tourer, just by changing the ergonomics a little bit, I think you'll be okay. That way.
So you spoke of the RS660, but you also imply the RS457.
Oh, sorry. Every time I've said 660, I mean the 457. It's just that 660 rolls off your tongue very easily. 457.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So finally, let's come down to the fairing. Okay, Aprilia officially on their website says full tri-LED headlamp.
Is that what got you?
And my expression when I read that is exactly this. The shape of the fairing with this surprised two DRLs that are like, whoa, really? Because Aprilia is famous for having a 3-part headlight. They've done it for years and years on literally everything that they make as a signature design element. On the Tuono 1100s, the center beam is your high beam and the side beams are low beams. On this Tuono, the side beams are 2 LEDs and the middle beam is vertically stacked with a high and a low. It's a okay headlight. In the city, it was fine. If there was just enough light oncoming, then it was useless. So it is just fine. On the highway, I would not trust this headlight. If I were to be taking a Tuono and thinking I'm going touring, you're definitely going to need auxiliary lamps. The red tray at the bottom, the spoiler lip, whatever you want to call it, is inspired by the VR1000. the original Tuono,
Okay.
which did have a spoiler like this. Just remember that on that Tuono, the headlight was this wide. So this lip, which was always contrast colored, was also always this wide. So there was a black and yellow Tuono, and that lip was yellow. There was a black and red Tuono, and that lip was red, just like it is on our Tuono. But they squashed the headlamp like this and then put the lip under it. I'm telling you, if you forget the headlight in the middle for a minute and just look at the DRLs on and that lip, it just looks like somebody going. And I'm not convinced that it works with the rest of the motorcycle. So to me, the worst design aspect of this motorcycle is how that headlight looks. And if Aprilia were to stick with the playbook, which they have put in marketing terms, it's the most renegade or most rebellious Tuono ever because it doesn't follow any of the Tuono design precepts. It's their part of their website. You can read it. It's quite funny. But I don't think it helps this motorcycle. If this motorcycle had the top half fairing of the RS457, as Tuonos do, if it had a belly pan, which is the other half of the fairing that Tuonos normally do, just like the RS does, I think this would be a more appealing motorcycle.
Okay.
In the process of the design, the fuel tank has become 300 milliliters or something smaller.
Really?
Yeah, because they added the headlight fairing, etc., etc. The weight between the RS and the Tuono is exactly the same. There's no difference there.
What?
Yeah, because they reshaped the tank and then all of that. Plus the handlebar weighs more, etc., etc. So it evens out. So if I'm not mistaken, I'll put the numbers up. They're both 175 kilos wet. There's no difference between the two. And I'm telling you, only Aprilia can pull off stuff like this.
I think they just said, forget it, man. We'll put a bigger number. Why wait again?
So, I mean, honestly, I'm so disappointed about the rear suspension not working better. Some of it was the fact that a lot of my test route is now concrete, and that was on purpose because our lives are becoming full of concrete, and Indians are experts at laying bad concrete. I would like us to become experts at laying good concrete, but I think that's still some time away.
I learned that the official term for the concrete that's used for highways is PQC.
Pre-cured concrete. No.
Pavement quality concrete.
क्वालिटी किधर से है इसके अंदर?
मैं तो वही बोल रहा पेवमेंट कौन सा पेवमेंट
क्वालिटी नहीं questionable.
My God, when I read that, I said pavement quality concrete.
No,
They want to trip people up.
No,
for
I think
the
you
pavement zones.
I think you misread it. It's not quality, it's questionable.
Completely questionable concrete.
Yeah. Dude.
CQC, completely questionable
Yeah, dude,
concrete.
it's look, that part is not the Tuono's fault. But if you buy a Tuono, you're going to live in that condition. So I'm giving you fair warning.
No, I think it's fair because on the other hand, we have seen, like, let's say the Duke, which is also a fantastic motorcycle in terms of handling.
Correct.
It's a fantastic motorcycle in terms of ride, and it is this enthusiasm, or let's say hyperbole is valid because that bike has come a long way from the second to the third gen.
Massive.
With what it's doing with its suspension. Forget about the chassis and the engine, but the suspension is a genuine step up.
It is.
And
Agreed.
if they are managing to pull it off,
Correct.
while being sharp, while being fun, while being comfortable,
Correct.
you will always expect more from something that's more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's fair. There's nothing.
But I'll tell you this: every time the road smoothened out, head over heels in love with how this motorcycle feels to ride, because the feel of that chassis, the noise from the engine, that sense of I'm riding an expensive motorcycle is just so cool.
Yeah.
It really is a special motorcycle. But I've told you the issues.
Yeah.
That's the story of the Tuono.
Awesome. I'm going to admit that this has happened to me so many times. I've looked at Italians and their designs in print, like you see photos, and you think, kya kiya hai?
Correct.
And then when you see them in person, like, interesting.
Yeah. I give you a Tuono story to corroborate this. When you see these Tuono pictures, I'm talking 2016, when I'm fascinated with the idea and we know a test bike is coming from Piaggio India or whatever. And you look at what Aprilia calls Superpole graphics, and they were like at odds with everybody else. You know, it's like the one guy who wants to order meat, but everyone in their friend is vegetarian. Aprilia was that person, right? Because Ducati is going to clean shapes and forms, and Honda came a long way from the Fox Eye Fireblades, weird pastel and all of this nonsense to restrained colors and all. And then Aprilia, big A, red patch, black patch, stripes. What the hell is going on? And I met Gigi Dalinia at that point. He had come to Mumbai for an event, and I said, why are you making a motorcycles look like this? And he smiled and he said, this is who we are. We make vibrant motorcycles. We are not afraid of what we make. And our motorcycles will never try to hide in the background. We are foreground people. And I understood it. When you see the Tuono, you're like, Yeah, I get it.
It works.
It makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And today, if you think about it, very few manufacturers are using lots of colors in graphics. And Aprilia continue to remain the exception to this.
And make it work.
And make it work. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the tricky part.
Yeah.
And somehow it's strange, but Italians always, most of the times, manage to pull this off. They'll go do something which will shake your standards, beliefs.
Yeah.
And then when you actually get a sample, a real taste of it, and you're like, hey,
I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get
it's working.
Yeah.
So I always, even when I saw the Tuono in pictures, my thought was like, yeah, that face.
That
And
face.
then when it rolled in here, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's not a problem.
Yeah, no, so I loved the headlight only for one thing. When I sit on the motorcycle,
I don't have to see
you
it.
can see it. I can't.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, therefore also all the traditional issues of the RS 457 are also on the Tuono. There is no heel plate, so there's nothing to rest your heel against. So Aprilia has very generously given you 2 plastic protectors on the swing arm, which move against your boot the whole time. And on the concrete road for one stretch of a straight, so I actually rested my boot on top of the plastic just to see how much movement is going on back there. Lots. Our concrete is really awesome.
oh,
So
I'm
if I were buying the Tuono or the RS, I would want to figure out a way to get a heel plate. Happened also on the Duke, so not an unknown issue, not an unusual thing happens. On the Duke, I have a R15 heel plate that was drilled into the subframe and bolted on, worked really well for me. But if I were to buy one of these motorcycles, as much as I would be messing with Italian design, I would totally be messing with Italian design. Under the rear seat is what looks like a very nice tray. It's clean, it's designed, so it's not a hole and you can't store anything under it. I just wish Aprilia had thought about utility there a little bit more and left you more places to hook things to or attach stuff to, so that mounting luggage, etc., would be just a more logical way to do it. Because it actually looks like a rack when you open the seat, but then it doesn't work like a rack.
it has the same grab rails like on the RS457.
Same, the wing grab rails. Again, fantastic design. They blend into the design. You don't notice that the grab rails are there, and then you're like, oh, they are grab rails.
It's a thick
It's very
sheet
cool.
of metal.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
It's all right. Yeah.
Okay. Summary?
Let's do a summary.
All right. So we've been talking about Aprilia's Tuono 457, which is the naked version of the RS 457, which we've spoken about earlier and definitely felt very Aprilia. So what that means is it's fundamentally a brilliant motorcycle to ride and the experience that it creates. It's the combination of the chassis, it's the engine, and well, the design as well in the RS457's case. The Tuono's design is different. It's a naked, it has a new headlamp and tri-LED headlamp as it's written in the brochure, which is a design element for Tuonos. Typically they have the low beams on the side and the high beams in the middle. In this case, it's just LED TRLs effectively on the sides, and the low beam and high beam are stacked vertically in the middle. It's a distinctive look and it's better in the flesh than in the pictures. So don't judge it on that. The motorcycle fundamentally to ride is like the 457, which is a great thing because it's a powerful engine, it's a flexible engine, it's a brilliant chassis, it's solid, it's quick, it's light to ride. The main issue here is with the suspension, which is firm. It's about the same as the RS457. It is the same as the RS457. No changes have been made, and that's what Shumi felt, that it could have been softer. Maybe Aprilia should have tuned this a little differently for the Tuono, given that Indian road conditions are so different from other markets where this will be sold. And the reason for that also is that this bike is more reactive. That's because while the setup mechanically is the same, the front forks are riding a little bit higher up in the triple Ts. So that has changed the angle of the bike, the front end, which makes it sharper. And that makes it more flickable and more fun. But it also means it'll feel like it's working in your hands all the time. And along with the suspension being the way it is, it might feel a bit busy at times.
Actually, you put it so beautifully. Okay, this is not a busy motorcycle by nature. Engine, gearbox, it's not a busy motorcycle. This suspension makes the Tuono feel busy all the time if the roads aren't perfect. And that dissonance is what gets to you.
Right.
So the discomfort is the next step after the dissonance. So the first thing is engine settle down, fuel economy settled down. The sense, the sound, the hearing, everything settled down. So peaceful,
Correct.
so smooth. Oh God, the suspension is not settling. It's that.
And that's the thing. What he said was that as soon as you transition to good tarmac, it feels beautiful
It
immediately.
feels global world class, like universally good.
So I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, it is that kind of a motorcycle. It'll get to you. So these are the things that are getting in the way. So the seating position has changed because you have a different handlebar. It's wider. You're a little bit more upright. Your body is upright, but your foot peg is at the same place. So your leg position is the same. So if it felt cramped on the RS457, it's going to feel the same here. A knock-on effect of that also is that your weight is sitting more vertically on the seat, and so you're using up the cushioning more, and now it starts to feel soft and therefore tiring. Shumi spent 300 kilometers on it. That loop is something that he does regularly with all the bikes, and in this case 50 kilometers from the end of the ride, he said he was done. And these are some things that are pretty remarkable, because he's done that loop on several bikes. We've discussed several bikes after his rides, and this is the one time I remember him actually discussing something with me, and not that we discussed the bike, but he said, my stabilizer muscles are gone. Right? That was one of the things he said.
Yeah.
And that's how bumpy it felt. And that bumpiness is primarily coming from the rear suspension, not from the front.
Yeah.
So it's that one thing that is actually putting this bike off kilter, so to speak.
Yeah.
But if you had good roads, if you're willing to put up with that, it's a great motorcycle.
Yeah, and I'll go so far as to say, if you buy a Tuono and you fall in love with it, don't spend the 20,000 on the quickshifter first. Go to a good suspension guy and ask them to sort out your suspension first.
Okay.
I think the potential motorcycle, if that discomfort thing is solved, this is a beautiful motorcycle. But I know that suspension is going to cause problems.
And the other problem that was there with the RS457, which was the brakes, they used to fade, which means when you're braking hard repeatedly, the pads get hot and then there's no bite. That used to be the case earlier because they were organic pads. Now Aprilia has shifted over to sintered pads, as they should have been in the first place. And Shumi tried it out with the Tuono, repeatedly braking hard, and he said he had no issue with bite, with feel, or with fade. So it felt like a good setup, so that issue is also gone.
Yep.
One of the smaller things that was also brought up with the RS457 was that there were no heel plates. So when you're sitting with your balls of your feet on the pegs and your heels raised up, you have nothing to push them in against and feel the bike as it's working. In this case, they put some.
They've always had a plastic protector on the swing arm, as before. But it's like against your heel and going up and down. Like
The swing arm itself is moving up and down.
Like, dudes.
So that's there, but the recommendation is get a proper solution if you choose to get this bike. It will be a good way to feel a better connection with the motorcycle. With the headlamp change, there's also, for some reason, a slight change in the volume of the tank by 300 ml. And Shumi on the ride saw 25 kmpl in
Something
efficiency,
like that,
so in that ballpark. Other than that, the only other change on the motorcycle is the gearing. It has one additional tooth at the rear, so that should shorten the gearing. But fundamentally, it isn't changing the feel of the motorcycle. The Tuono globally is an angrier feeling motorcycle compared to the RSV4, which is a very precise, quick motorcycle, whereas the Tuono just feels this restless kind of let's go kind of motorcycle.
Think of them as twin brothers. And they can't be sisters for the stories. For the sake of the analogy, they have to be brothers. One of them, they're both super intelligent, super sharp. One of them is studious, precise, and methodical. The other one has the same results in school. But this boy will always be in trouble because he can't see straight. He will see tikram in everything and want to do some tikrambazi in everything. And it's not because he's less intelligent. It is just because his worldview is just like, let's have a little fun with this.
And talking about intelligence, it has traction control. It's not an IMU based system, so
non-lean sensitive.
Yeah, it won't be lean sensitive, like that kind of finesse you will not get as you would with an IMU. But he's highlighted that despite it not having an IMU, its smoothness and its interventions by and large were very good, almost invisible. It's only when he was doing hooligan-giri and jumping off speed breakers, and when the suspension was unloaded, that's when it would cut in hard. And that's about it. So headlamp was not very intelligent. It's okay if the road is dark, but if you have oncoming traffic and light, then it's not really effective.
The Tuono and the RSV are bright brothers, but the headlight is not.
So, yeah, and for pillions, this is going to be as inconvenient as the RS457. There's no improvement there. It's a small little squab. You have great grab rails there, which can also be useful if you're carrying luggage because it's a nice hard point. But they could have done better with the space underneath the seat to make it easier and more convenient to strap on luggage. Tires, fantastic. The same TVS Eurogrip Pro Torque Extremes. Super, super grippy.
जितना लंबा टायर्स का नाम है उतना ही ग्रिप है.
So the instrument cluster, one of the best layouts, easy to use. We think second now only to the Enduro R, which is gorgeous. Aside from that, switch gear, everything high quality motorcycle, and that's one of the things that always remains. That this feels like a proper Aprilia, not like a budget Aprilia.
Yeah, I'll give you another example of this. My Tuono is pre-IMU. The last model they made before they put the IMU in was in 2017. Color screen and IMU came. I have a 16. And even today, when I ride at the racetrack, I have traction control on. It's usually set at about 5 out of, I think, 8 or 10. I'm not forgetting. And the idea is it intervenes as I have slick tires at the racetrack now. As they start to wear out, it intervenes. 99% of the time, I can't tell that it has intervened, and I'll see it on camera footage or when the light is lower and I can see that light flashing away. It's that subtle. And when I can start feeling it cut power, then I know my slicks are gone.
It has to go that far.
It has to go that far. And this is a 2016 traction control system.
Right.
And I'm telling you, I'm testing motorcycles that have current day IMU equipped large motorcycles. Like my Multistrada has a current day IMU, everything, right? That Aprilia has the same subtlety without the IMU in 2016 that I think the Ducati has today. The Ducati has algorithmically, logically, in terms of approach, in terms of ability to intervene how many times a second, far greater ability. But in 2016, Aprilia already knew how to do this smoothly. And I can see one-to-one that smooth connection of the traction control on the 457. For that kind of price bracket to have this kind of sophistication available, it's very good.
The one instance that he also shared, which I think is good to highlight, he was trying to make a U-turn at 17 kilometers an hour and was in third gear. That's the kind of flexibility that this engine has. But what Shumi would do if you were to get a Tuono, would go up another tooth.
At least.
So that it actually becomes a little bit wild and feels more Tuono.
Basically, if you make a +3 kind of change to the rear sprocket, the Tuono will come alive. The traction control suddenly will have a lot of work on its hands, right? Because this Tuono already, if you casually in second gear, not in third, second. If in second gear, casually roll off the throttle and roll back on the throttle, the front wheel comes up. Not a lot, but it comes up. It already has that kind of performance. I'm just saying, it's a very calm, considered motorcycle for what Tuonos have been traditionally. And I think the potential, because it's such a smooth engine, is you could do more. You don't have to, but you could.
All right. Nice.
Yeah.
Yummy, actually.
That brings us to the big issue with Aprilia, which is service and reliability. This is why we're not doing questions from circles this time. So if you go into the app and you're trying to look for them, they're not there because these are the two primary questions. I'm not sure if it is behind us as you see this episode because between recording and finishing, editing, etc., there's a little bit of a gap. But right now the hot button topic is, oh my God, Aprilia's engines are terrible.
Engines?
Yeah. There's been, I think, 2 people whose engines are blown or something. And it's all over the internet and now everybody's like, oh, Aprilia's engines, they're not a reliable company. Okay, so let's take this logically. First,
I mean, sorry, before you go there, I've not heard that before about engines being unreliable from Aprilia. You can, I mean,
look,
accuse them of being slow or let's say being them, but
look, let's be clear about this. Piaggio in India have not gathered a good reputation for service anyway.
Service.
They have not dealt with their Vespa customers or their Aprilia customers with great aplomb from the beginning. It's something that they are now working on. And every single time I speak to them, I can see how much work they're putting into it. But it's not something that will change overnight because these are distributed systems. There's lots of human beings at very, very long distances involved. And I know that if you take your RS or Tuono for service and there's a technical issue, there will be video calls made to an engineer back at the factory who's trying to help you walk through the solution. It's still in that situation. It is a little bit 19-20. But we warned you when the RS457 came that this is an organization that has to go through the process of learning this. If you don't want to participate in their learning, you shouldn't be buying this bike and you should not be tempted by the price.
This was said clear cut.
This was said clear cut. That's part one. Second, globally, Aprilia owners know that by and large these are reliable motorcycles. Like I have nothing to report about my Tuono. 10,000 kilometers on the track, I have nothing to report. Nothing has ever failed on that bike. Not until we dropped it. Right? No, I also dropped it after that. And we both have like panel damage, nothing major has happened. So we don't have anything to report. But we know that when the RS660 came out, there were a few hiccups here and there and so on and so forth. And it's okay. Many manufacturers go through this. Aprilia seems to have a more sticky reputation for stuff like this than usual. Plus they're Italian. So anyway, you have this fear of, oh, Italian. I've also had a Ducatis, two of them, 80,000 odd kilometers between the two of them. No major reliability issues really, but the reputation is, oh, it's a Ducati. It's not a Honda. Fair enough. This is what it is. I'm not judging you, judging either of these ideas. As far as I can tell, the engines have blown because mods were made and problems have happened from there. Now, a manufacturer will automatically say if an engine is blown and the mods are directly related to that mod, I can't give you a warranty. And the pressure on Aprilia right now, the stories seem to be designed to push Aprilia into a corner and say, we want a new engine under warranty. Now, first, I don't care whose fault it is. If your bike is under warranty, you shouldn't be modifying it in the first place, knowing that you don't think that this is a reliable brand in the first place. 3 year 30.
No, so that's interesting. He's not talking about the reliability of the part that you're fitting on. That Aprilia, we've been clear about this. That if you're buying this, be warned, the service might not be great. You may have issues with service and repairs and stuff like that. So why are you going and doing further complications? Why are you creating further complications?
Exactly. My policy when I come to modifying my motorcycles, and I do modify my motorcycles, is during the warranty period, you solve major issues. And my major issues will be comfort related, where I don't like the seat, or I don't like that handlebar, or I need to go to .5.1, etc. It'll be minor stuff. If I want to put a piggyback ECU of some sort on a bike, post warranty, not before. And it will also be purpose built to do one job, which is I have to solve this particular issue.
So Aprilia said that these two issues that have come up included some form of modifications.
Yeah. And they're saying both or 3 or 4, whatever this number of cases is, they're all exactly the same. They're all in warranty. They all have mods. They're all related to exhaust.
What kind of mods?
They won't obviously tell us, but that's part A. Part B, there is a separate issue which is also affecting a small number of motorcycles. I had asked them details about it. I haven't gotten a response from them yet, which is on certain bikes, it can sound like there's something around the radiator mounting that has come loose, but that's actually a valve that has too much play inside, for which they're replacing the head. They're not trying to fix it, they're replacing the head.
Oh.
Just in case there is damage, or there is a bigger technical issue, which obviously they won't discuss with us. In either case, those heads are being replaced. What I interpret from this is Aprilia is not turning away customers during the warranty period. They might be slow. They can be slightly annoying perhaps, but they are working through the process of finding you a solution. I haven't heard somebody who say they're refusing to replace my head. I have heard stories that saying, देखो, bike लिया था, head ही replace हो रहा है. Which is not a bad story to have. Right? KTM had issues with their first batch of third generation engines also. It was a very small issue, which led to a lubrication failure as far as I know, which led to other, what is called attendant damage. A lot of manufacturers don't cover attendant damage. You should read the warranties. It says, if this part fails, we'll replace this part. If the failure of this part breaks these other 11 parts, you pay for the 11 parts. This is pretty much standard. As anti-customer as it sounds, it's how warranties are usually written. But KTM did replace entire engines when they realized that the damage was too many things in the process, because lubrication damage can cause lots of damage, right?
And the KTM hasn't done that just once. They've done it several times.
Right? And we said for KTM, when KTM deploys new stuff, your guards should be up, give it 5, 8, 10 months, see how it stabilizes, and it always stabilizes, then buy those bikes, right? On the Adventure, we are saying now it is safe to buy the Adventure because the chassis may be new in some ways, but the engine has already been on the market for a year and a half. It's the same engine as a 390 Duke. We said the same for Aprilia too. We said, if you don't trust this brand, don't buy a bike from them. Then they have to work on reliability to make sure that this reputation goes behind them. If you still are so tempted by the motorcycle that you must have one, be double cautious, because you don't trust this brand for reliability in the first place. If you have 3 years, 36,000 kilometers of warranty, that's 3 years and 36,000 kilometers of riding a stock bike and doing minor adjustments at best. Your minor adjustments could be, I don't like these levers, can I get better levers? I want better mirrors, I want to take a better seat, I want to change my tires, brake pads, that's it. Don't mess with a system that you're anyway not willing to trust. Why are you buying a motorcycle from a brand you don't trust in the first place?
Sir, real sir.
And then now on the other side, the content that I'm seeing, what we used to see about KTM's in terms of content from, say, let's call it 2017 to 2022, that content is now all RS 457s. I'm sorry, but let us be clear about this. I believe that this is fundamentally a reliable motorcycle. But this is not going to be a Japanese motorcycle where you're not on top of maintenance, you're not top of taking care of it, and it'll just run. I don't think Italians know how to make that motorcycle. If that's your mindset, please do buy some Honda thing. 1. 2, during the warranty period, knowing that Piaggio India's service is not up to the level that premium motorcycles are at today, don't mess with your bike. Do the minimums that you need to make it comfortable for yourself. Enjoy those years and kilometers of riding. Don't mess with your motorcycle. I'm telling you, when things go sideways, this company will try to help, but the systems to help are not as efficient as other company systems. You're just putting yourself in a poor spot. But you have a thought, I can see it.
This was to the MotorInc fam. You guys are doing a tremendous job. We know that. And I think if we are more conscious and more careful as riders out there on the roads, and I think that is a big need today, as lots of incidents that have happened recently highlight how the mood against motorcyclists can turn so quickly. And it is happening everywhere because of things not necessarily you, but people are doing. So you can do your part and just leave a better impression. I mean, it's a very silly thing to say, but we are part of a community and we are riding these quick motorcycles. We can look intimidating. We can be in control, but look irresponsible. So where you can manage it so that as a community, we are building a better space for ourselves. And that is the need, especially because this is at 4 lakh rupees. This is not much money today for somebody who wants to buy a motorcycle. It's an incredibly potent motorcycle. Let's use it responsibly. Let's think about the longer goals that we want to have rather than be seen as, anti-social elements or stupid real shooting people.
Yeah, the day the distinction between a premium motorcyclist and a nuisance motorcyclist is lost, we are all screwed. We are then going to go every day. You click into first gear and you will enter an hostile world. We're already seeing it happening.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely.
People are already hostile to motorcycles. If we are going to behave badly as a group, then we will be treated badly as a group in response. Whether that response is rational, irrational, ill-advised, harmful, it doesn't matter. There are multiple sides to the same story, and you can keep saying that we weren't doing anything. Those particular individuals may not actually have been doing anything, but the rest of the group that went down that road, that previous 32 weekends, and made a nuisance of themselves, they did enough damage. This also happened on the second India Bike Week ride to Goa that people were going on the day before, as you would, and that highway was full of bikes. And a friend of mine said a friend of his got caught and thrashed. Okay? And that guy didn't know why he was being thrashed.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because to them, it's motorcycle, or let's say big bike, and somebody who's looking outlandish. They're not going to be able to make out the difference between one to the other.
That's it. What happened was, there was a cyclist going across the highway. Okay, the cyclist was a dumbass, we accept. And there was a near miss with another bike. Nothing happened to this villager as far as I can remember, but I may be wrong. As far as I can remember, villager got a scare. And then these guys are seeing that today, for some reason, these fast things are just one after the other. So they basically waited till they could catch one of them, who just happened to be this particular guy, no fault of his. And they basically bashed him. They bashed him because they could. If we are not careful as a group, please tell your friends. You don't have to ride badly to be perceived as somebody who's riding badly. And that's a bad situation to be.
Anyways, yummy, Aprilia. that was a happy note, and we can end on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you have something more to add.
No, in sum, I think it's a fantastic motorcycle with two very, very clear issues that you will spot as soon as you take a test ride. The seat you can solve quite easily. Suspension can be solved, far more expensive solve. To me, the bike is so good that it should be something that you would consider investing in solving. But to me, it shouldn't have happened like that. Aprilia should just have tuned the suspension and given it a more supple setting in the first place. And it doesn't even have to be like luxuriously comfortable. It just has to be as absorbent as the front more or less is anyway.
Between these two, which would you?
Between the RS and the Tuono, as it is today, I would take the RS. Because the RS meets my expectation for discomfort. The Tuono breaks my expectation of comfort. And I don't know that for 30,000 rupees, I can't bridge that gap because, hey, I can change a handlebar, it's fine. It's much cheaper than changing the suspension.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
So if you have any more questions, to write to us. We'd love to see you on the app. And we've been inviting more and more of you to come and share your stories of your cars, bikes, travels, journeys. So we'll catch you there, and plus talk about the Tuono. And if you're writing to us on YouTube, we'll be there with you as well. Do let us know your queries, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.